Okay, so the Rams gave the Eagles some unexpected bulletin board material after what Jared Verse said. And better yet, he wishes he hadn't said it at all. So how are Eagles players responding, and what bit of injury news for LA might have a significant impact on how Vic Fangio attacks Matthew Stafford? Plus the latest on the weather forecast and how it plays into Saquon Barkley's advantage, as well as how LeSean McCoy is helping number 26 ahead of the game. So let's talk about that, all the matchups to watch, and the latest on Kellen Moore's weekend interviews. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? All right, let's just start out with some great news off the top, because Dallas Goedert was back at practice on Friday after missing Thursday's session due to an illness. Meaning, 1, the Eagles are as healthy as they could be, and 2, the ground game that was already solid is in really good hands. And the reason I say that is because when Dallas Goedert is on the field this season, the Birds have had the best running game efficiency in the league. Whereas without him, the ground attack is still good, it's just more in that top 5 to top 10 category. But wait, it gets better because it feels like the football gods are smiling down on Philly to give the Eagles what most updated weather forecasts call a winter storm watch, bringing 5 to 8 inches of snow. Plus, as you're well aware by now, the numbers are absolutely atrocious for Matthew Stafford when the venue is freezing cold and raining or snowing, which is probably an advantage according to left tackle Jordan Mailata.
Miserable, I'm not gonna lie. But as one of the advantages of playing at home, you've got to get used to this weather. And for it to be very consistent weather, it's good for us. But then again, it's whoever shows up on Sunday.
Obviously, that's a given, but what Jared Verse said about Eagles fans left a lot of people in disbelief. By the way, in case you somehow haven't heard this yet, rookie pass rusher Jared Verse told Gary Klein of the LA Times that he hates Eagles fans, saying they're so annoying and I hate them. But, he didn't stop there and said, when I see that green and white, I hate it. I actually get upset, like actually genuinely get hot. Now, I know rookies sometimes got to learn things the hard way, but this is one of those that seems blatantly obvious. I mean, Jared Verse, I don't know what you're doing there. You automatically give bulletin board material. Maybe it's best to just not even show up.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. You should find yourself a safe house or a relative close by. Lay low for a while.
Like, if you thought the Sunday Night Football matchup earlier this season was bad, then, bro, just wait until you show up to the link. Again, you'd think he'd want less bulletin board material, but I'm here for it. For the record, Verse did come back to say he should have said dislike instead of hate, which honestly makes this whole thing just even better.
I immediately regret this decision.
It's not the first time we've had a postseason clash against an NFC West opponent and annoyed their players or, I guess, family members. Remember the whole incident with Joey Bosa before the NFC Championship game in 2022, which made him look like a clown. But sure, Verse will be on the field, so probably not as close with the fans. However, that doesn't mean the Eagles players aren't fired up when it comes to sending a message. Heck yeah, we all know it's going to be lit at the link, and good luck, Jared, because you're about to get a real taste of Philly.
It smells like mushrooms, and everyone looks like they want to hurt me.
Look, Jared was probably just feeling himself, since he's the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year favorite and has had at least 3 total pressures in every single game this season. Well, actually, I take that back. One of them he didn't, and you can guess which one that was. Yes, against Jordan Mailata and the Eagles. So sure, I'm biased, but it feels like that could be the same story and same verse for Jared. Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on this. I think it's personally just hilarious. Is it getting blown out of proportion? I don't know, maybe, but also at the same time, why did he even say that? He regretted it. And then while you're doing that, drop a like, make sure to subscribe because the channel is less than 2,000 subscribers away from getting to 100,000 subscribers. And also, just as a reminder, as soon as I hit 100,000 subscribers, I'm going to randomly select one lucky person to join me and Thomas at the NovaCare Complex this offseason to meet Nolan Smith and all the other Philly dogs. So there you go. Like I said, drop a like, hit the sub button. It would really mean a lot. Speaking of meaning a lot, obviously the team is fully locked in and ready to keep up that undefeated streak in the divisional round at home. And while most everyone's buying into it, there have been several comments anxious about Kellen Moore taking 3 interviews this weekend ahead of the rematch with LA. Although Nick Sirianni did everything to dispel those notions and try to put everyone's minds at ease.
He'll be in all the meetings and doing all his work. There's no doubt that he has been all week, and he's done everything the way he's needed to do it to get ourselves ready for this. I think there's sometimes a misconception of coaches that, like, at the end of the week you don't get any time to relax. Like, there is a time on Fridays and Saturday afternoons where you do that, and those are the times that in these scenarios, guys get to, earn the right to interview for jobs. And I think that we're not the only ones in this position. There's a lot of teams that are still going in this weekend that are having guys do this as well. So Kellen's ready, has our team ready, and so yeah, he's handled it big time all week, which really I never thought that he wouldn't. So yeah, he's handled it like a pro.
I don't know if that makes you feel any better or just doesn't even move the needle at all, but honestly, I think we're going to be okay due to an unstoppable running game. But for the sake of the argument, let's just say the Rams sell out to try and limit Saquon. Since after all, like Anthony DeBona pointed out, Barkley will become the 8th player in NFL history to face a team in the playoffs after rushing for 200 or more yards against them during the season. And believe it or not, all 7 guys previously were held under 100 yards rushing in their playoff rematch. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen, but hypothetically, if they were able to do that, then it feels like you're going to get a passing game that very much favors Philly based on what the Rams' weaknesses are there. Because while LA's been effective at containing passes over the middle, FYI, they ranked 10th in efficiency against those throws over the middle and were 1st in the league against slot receivers. But the number absolutely craters on throws outside, which I think, as we all know, is what Jalen Hurts is really good at. Honestly, the only area I'm really concerned about is the kicking game. Yes, Jake Elliott made 2 big kicks, but he also missed an extra point against the Packers, and has been noted as missing kicks in practice as well as in pregame warmups last week. Now, it's true, it hasn't cost Philly yet, but it is an area of concern. Of course, on the flip side, Rams kicker Josh Carty isn't automatic either. For one, the Rams don't play outdoors much, but in the 5 outdoor games this season, Carty's missed 3 kicks. One an extra point versus the Jets, one a 26-yarder against the Patriots, and the other a 43-yarder against the Bears. Yeah, so they got some struggles there too, but whenever I think about the matchup, Vic Fangio, Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, I'm confident in Fangio being able to scheme something up to stop him. Obviously, he did a great job in the first meeting, yet there were moments where McVay was able to use motion to confuse and get guys uncovered. And with how Stafford's been playing lately with quick throws, Fangio knows it might not be the same as the first meeting.
His talent and his know-how, he's still one of the top passers in the league. Very, very smart, can read coverages, like better than most, if not one of the top 2 or 3. Can put the ball and still has tremendous arm talent, can put the ball anywhere.
The other thing that's definitely worth mentioning is the Eagles obviously don't have BG in this one, and 55 was practically unstoppable that night. However, the reason to have confidence is not only how I've been talking about Nolan Smith, but Jalyx Hunt has filled in incredibly well while playing against the run and the pass. Plus, I know Jalen Carter sometimes gets overshadowed because he's not one of the guys getting the actual sack, yet the attention he gets every single down has helped all the other fellas eat. And when you think about the fact that Milton Williams has one of the highest pressure rates in the entire league, that's a dangerous tandem. With Milt saying just one guy can't block me. If you're going to leave me one-on-one, I like my chances, and I'm confident I'll win against anybody. So you know what? I'm going to throw him in on my pick him on underdog. And you can too, because right now when you scan the QR code or just click the link in the description and use code Philly Special, Underdog will give you a special pick in the lobby along with up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Of course, several of you guys got in on the Saquon carries total before it bumped, but still, I've had a couple others saying like, okay, are there any other plays you like this weekend? And there are a couple, so here's what I'm going to go with. Bad weather game, taking Kenny Gainwell over 3.5 rushing yards in the first half. Thomas loves that one, but it has hit really well. Milton Williams to get a sack that he was talking about. I mean, again, you talk about the pressure rates, Jalen Carter, I think that one's a lock. And then Matthew Stafford have under 17 fantasy points. Remember, he's been atrocious in cold weather games, so I'll live with it if he goes over that line. Again, get signed up with code Philly Special because as the official sponsor of the channel, you won't find any better deals or promos elsewhere. By the way, I know some of you aren't able to play in the pick'em games based on your location. However, when you go with their draft leagues, it opens up a ton more locations. And probably not surprising, but with the playoffs in full swing, they're paying out some of the highest payouts to the person who's able to draft the top lineup. In case you were wondering, it's literally like fantasy football. It's just for the playoffs, so you draft a team based on the divisional round, see if you get your top guys, and then, pray that it hits for you. I mean, I've actually won more money on the draft leagues than the pick'ems, but I don't know, maybe that's just my luck. Again, scan the QR code, use code Philly Special, get up to $1,000 in bonus cash, or just click the link in the description. All right, another bit of news here, and very surprising, has to do with the Rams injury report. As LA has 3 starters listed as questionable in defensive tackle Bobby Brown, cornerback Akhello Witherspoon, and left tackle Alaric Jackson. Granted, Sean McVay did say he expects all 4 to play, but it's at least noteworthy that Bobby Brown, who's been dealing with a shoulder, didn't get a single practice in this week. And considering he's a vital piece to the run defense, that could potentially be a big blow. There's also Witherspoon, who got in a limited practice at least, yet the idea of him being not 100% and going up against A.J. Brown on the outside could mean a big day for Swole Batman. However, out of the 3 names, the one I'm very curious about is Alaric Jackson. Because first he was on the injury report this week with a chest injury and missed practice, then got in a full one, but then ended up missing practice again on Friday, and it's a completely different injury. It's based on his knee now. So you wonder, something happened late, he's listed as questionable, Sean McVay did think and did say that he's probably going to play, just something to keep an eye on. Again, it may not be too much, but just something especially with Josh Sweat, Jalyx Hunt, or even Nolan being moved around there. Lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Eagles and Lions snowball game, where the Birds won 34-20 in one of the most fun games I've honestly ever watched, as LeSean McCoy rushed for a then franchise record of 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, Shady was just unreal. So of course, with the snow coming in, it makes sense for Saquon to get a little insider information to gain whatever advantage he can.
Probably one of his most memorable games. I think he had another one in Buffalo too, when he played in the snow game. Definitely gonna call Shady, and just in case we do get some snow, see what he did, because there's no reason, it don't make sense how he was able to cut in that snow, and you could just see he was on a whole different level. I'm familiar with it.
I like it. A little extra wisdom and knowledge never hurts. Also, for those that may have missed it, I had Eagles writer Anthony DeBona on to cover some of the other key matchups and storylines to look out for Sunday. So the Eagles taking on the Rams. Thoughts on potential areas, and we covered a little bit of this already and go back and forth, but to recap for people and just going in, the matchups that you're taking a look at, areas of Eagles' strength that they can take advantage, what are the biggest 2 to 3 that you got your eye on?
So the number one strength has to be the offensive line. I feel like we saw how they dominated in that first matchup, and they just had their way on the ground. But then again, a lot of people are getting kind of scared heading into this matchup because of how well the Rams have played over the last month or so, and how they're able to escape that shootout against Buffalo. But since then, they've held 4 straight opponents, besides the game where they wrestled all their starters against the Seahawks, but they held 4 straight opponents to single-digit scoring, and everybody's like, oh my God, these are the Rams that nobody wants to play, and Dan Orlovsky's praising them, and everybody else is praising them. So, I get it, their defense is playing well, but you're not playing against the Philadelphia Eagles every week, and a team that can kind of switch in the way that they play. They don't have to force feed A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith. They don't have to force feed Saquon Barkley. They can kind of do it however they want, and you pretty much have to stop them. And we saw in that first matchup, they kind of just fed Saquon Barkley until they couldn't stop him, and they couldn't stop him. So, I mean, he ran for 250 yards. I don't think he's going to run for that much, but especially if the weather's going to play a factor, it feels like everything kind of trends in the direction where it's playing into the Eagles' favor, where they're a more physical team. They have a physical running back in Saquon Barkley, whereas Kyren Williams isn't exactly like Josh Jacobs, where he's breaking a ton of tackles. He's one of the worst running backs as far as a high-usage running back, as far as yards after contact. So the Eagles really don't have to worry about him as much as they did Josh Jacobs breaking 8 tackles or whatever he did in that one play last week. So definitely the offensive line is one area where I would say that the Eagles have a huge advantage. And then I have to shift also to the receivers on the outside. I feel like we mentioned it before, but the Rams cornerbacks on the outside aren't that great. Their pass defense isn't the best. They kind of rely on their front four getting there and using the twists and stunts that they have in recent weeks, and hoping that kind of moves the quarterback off their spot and forces them into making a bad throw or just keeping the ball or throwing it in the dirt. So if the Eagles can kind of keep Jalen Hurts clean, which they were able to do the first time around, I feel like they'll really be able to take advantage of, especially A.J. Brown, coming off kind of a disappointing performance last week. I think he's due for a big performance this week. And then flipping onto the other side of the ball, I just think the interior of Los Angeles offensive line is there to be taken advantage of. I think it could be a big game for the Eagles defensive front as a whole, but especially Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. I feel like they had their way last week, especially Milton Williams. He wasn't necessarily putting up a ton of stats, but he was just constantly in the backfield. And I feel like this might be the week that he finally does get a sack against the Rams and kind of takes advantage of Matthew Stafford's inability to kind of move out of the pocket.
I love it, and we're kind of thinking along the same lines there, because I took the Milton Williams anytime sack. I've got Matthew Stafford under on fantasy points, and then Kenny Gainwell was the line was 3.5 yards over under rushing yards for the first half. I mean, I know it's not the whole game, but Kenny gets inserted very quickly in games. He's hit that line. I mean, it feels like almost every first quarter, not even the first half.
All you need is Saquon to get a 15-plus yard run, and he immediately taps his helmet. There you go. Kenny G comes in. He's going to get 5 yards a pop usually or so. And
you just run and dive into the snow, and you're going to pick up 4 yards, and then just be like, all right, Kenny, you're good. You got it. Get out for the first half. He's good to go. No, I totally agree, though. I mean, again, you mentioned the interior line for the Rams. Milton Williams, he got 2 sacks last time in L.A. I think it matches up perfectly, because even if Jalen Carter gets all that focus, which here's the one thing. Jalen Carter gets a ton of praise and it's totally deserved. And even to the point of like, okay, hey, he's getting these awards and recognition for, All-Pro, for Pro Bowl, like things like that. But I think sometimes he still does not get enough recognition because like, hey, well, he didn't have a sack this game. And a lot of times people will just go and look, say, well, who got the sack? And that's who gets the ultimate. And it's understandable. That's the way that things go. But, I mean, my gosh, if you look at who gets the sacks in these games, almost every single time that there is a sack, it is because Jalen Carter is double-teamed, and something that the offensive line is having to do allows these guys to go beat the one-on-one. So even if Jalen Carter does not get the sack, I'm totally with you that is an area they will exploit, not only in the passing game, but also in the run game and stopping Kyren Williams. So, and who knows, maybe we get a Kyren Williams fumble, like you mentioned earlier as well, because he's got a lot of those lost fumbles. So if people want to go out there and take those picks, feeling good. I like those matchups. I like the potential for A.J. Brown. You mentioned him as well. As far as weaknesses, any concerns, any other areas? We recapped a few of those, but just biggest 2 or 3 matchups and or weaknesses you might be keeping an eye on for Philly.
So I'm going to start with, I think, probably the most obvious one, which is going to be, unfortunately, without Nakobe Dean, it seems like they're going to be going with either Oren Burks or Jeremiah Trotter, maybe a mix of both in that second linebacker spot. But I texted you about this earlier in the week, where it's just like Sean McVay is kind of one of the last guys, even Matt LaFleur last week. They're really good at kind of isolating a defense's weakness and kind of keep attacking it. So maybe that's why Vic Fangio is going to mix it up and maybe use a rotation, because they each have their strengths and weaknesses. So maybe they'll use that to kind of throw LA off a little bit. But at the same time, I feel like they're the glaring weakness on this Eagles defense that's really stout as a whole. So maybe Vic Fangio will be able to kind of hide both of them and do different things to either make it so they can't, Los Angeles can really take advantage of them. But at the same time, I think they're going to get them eventually, because the way that they move Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, even Tyler Higbee, who's given the Eagles fits before, I think all 3 of those players can be tough matchups for whoever that second linebacker is for the Eagles. So that would be the first spot that I would really watch out for. And then on the flip side, I just think you have to just be careful with Jalen Hurts. I mean, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts himself is a weakness, but we saw what the Rams were able to do against the Vikings last week, where they kind of slowed Sam Darnold down, where he couldn't really wait in the pocket and really let these routes develop across the middle or even down the field. And if they do win these matchups up front, we saw Philadelphia's offensive line struggle a little bit with the unique looks that Green Bay was showing last week, where they were getting to Jalen Hurts, or at least flushing him from the pocket. And that's kind of Hurts can kind of get in trouble, where if he doesn't throw the ball away, or if he doesn't take off running, where he kind of has that little bit of indecision where he holds it for just a little bit too long, that's usually where it's a recipe for disaster, where he's either like sliding down for a 5-yard loss for no reason, or he is getting sacked and potentially fumbling or things like that. So I just think the battle of almost Jalen Hurts versus himself, where he has to just be more decisive, know to get rid of the ball, and not let the tricks and the stunts and the twists that Los Angeles is going to throw at him, don't let that get to him, and just stay to your game and be deliberate and know exactly what you're going to do and get to it quickly.
Yep, I completely agree. The other thing also with Jalen that there is the confidence in, and yes, we talk about like getting rid of the ball quickly. Jalen is second to last in terms of longest time to throw. Lamar Jackson is the longest. Then it's Jalen Hurts second to last, and then Sam Darnold third to last. So we talked about the element of Sam Darnold getting absolutely destroyed by the Rams and all that. But there's differences there. Jalen will see the film. Jalen will also his biggest self-critic, like he's talked about. And anytime there's doubt that comes in, especially after like a big time game, it does feel like Jalen responds. So that's the part that I'm like the most confident in, of going like, Jalen says that he doesn't listen to or hear the noise, but he listens to it enough, because after that Steelers game, he comes back and he says, or actually I think it was actually after the Jaguars game, whenever he threw a couple of those dots there to DeVonta Smith, to Jahan Dotson scoring the touchdown passes, and he got asked a question. He's like, well, yeah. He's like, why? He's like, say I can't. And he's like trying to call out the haters, the critics. So it's like he does listen to it just enough, even if it's just a little bit to fuel the fire. That's perfectly fine. But I think that's where there's the confidence on my side of going, yes, something to look at, something to keep an eye out. But with the Rams, how we feel, how a lot of people feel, probably going to try to do everything possible to change the game plan and stop Saquon Barkley. It is a great opportunity for Jalen. Just take advantage of that, lean into the game plan. Hopefully Kellen Moore schemes something up in the hours before he took his interviews. No, I'm not going to go there. We're okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to be all right. We got a super chat here from Albert. Appreciate the 2. Said Eagles will win 35-21, 200-plus yards on the ground. It wouldn't surprise me. I do think that's still very possible, even if they want to sell out for the run. Like we've seen games where it's a little bit slower start, kind of grind it out, take some time, and then you get going. So, yeah, 35-21. Snow game. It doesn't have to be lower scoring. I'm leaning towards lower scoring. We're going to get into our first touchdown picks and score predictions here, so got to have a good segue. But it doesn't have to be lower scoring, even though, like, naturally, whenever I see, there's some weather conditions, all this, my first thought, my first reaction is like, it's going to be lower score. Like, lower score, slower, maybe turnovers, or just not moving the football very well. But what about you? You get score predictions. What would you go with for the game here?
So I pointed out to you, I texted you before that we started recording that the snowball, because now they're predicting, who knows, 3 to 5 inches, maybe it's going to be nothing, who knows. But the snowball, the final score was actually 34-20. I know a lot of people think because of those conditions it would be lower scoring game. So at first when I saw the forecast, I was like, maybe I will go with a lower scoring game, and maybe that's not where they go. But it seems like after I saw that score and I thought about it a little bit more, I had the Eagles winning by double digits once again. I predicted it last week. I had 31-17 last week. I have it a little bit closer this time around. I have the Eagles winning 30-20 over the Rams in the divisional round, moving on to the conference championship game.
Let's go. Little bonus, if I may. Who are they playing in the conference championship game?
You ready for this? They're hosting the Washington Commanders.
Oh, let's go. You're seriously going to predict that?
I'm going to sound crazy, but I truly do think that Jaden Daniels is unbelievable, and I think the Lions aren't really ready for what him and the Commanders can bring. I feel like that week off, we've seen it happen in the past where that week off can kind of hurt a team in a little bit, but I think this might be the one that kind of gets the Lions, and I think the Commanders are going to beat them. Okay,
I can appreciate going out on a limb like that. Again, that's a 9.5 point spread, I believe. So, we're not going to say it's a lock, of course, because people know the difficulties and be responsible if you are going to take a bet or something there. But 9.5, it wouldn't totally shock me, wouldn't surprise me. Like you say, Jane Daniels is the X factor. We've seen running quarterbacks before. It's a different thing to go divisional round, next round. Not as much flying under the radar, but I think it's very possible. For me, I'm going to go back to the Eagles score prediction. I'm going to say 23-17. Mine's a little bit lower scoring, but I think that they can get it done. Moving on to the next round. Unfortunately, my prediction is that it's going to be in Detroit, so we're going to play the Lions. But it is an Eagles win, so just throw that one out there. Lastly, we do always predict the first-time touchdown score, so it's time to get back on track. Who is going to score first in the snow, in the 12, 16, 24 inches worth of snow? Who's going to score first?
I feel like a couple weeks in a row I've kind of went with an Eagles player, and it's kind of came back to bite me, and I haven't really had too much success. So unfortunately, I'm going to go with a Rams player this time around, and it's going to be a player that we talked about earlier that's kind of had their way with the Eagles in the past. They were on fire last week before they got hurt. I think Tyler Higbee is going to catch the first touchdown of the game. I just think the fact that the Eagles don't have that second linebacker, and they usually do defer if they do win the coin toss, so I think the Rams will have the ball first. Maybe they kind of march down the field a little bit. That's usually what they do. They don't really get to third down. They kind of just march down the field and beat you on first and second down. And I think Tyler Higbee's going to get one in the red zone and be the first touchdown scorer in this game.
Okay. Reminder, I've seen people, freak out in the chat and go, no, Anthony, we don't want that. You still have the Eagles winning. So, we've had many games where the other team scores first and then the Eagles end up winning, and a lot of them where it's a blowout. So
actually, this first matchup in Week 12, I predicted Kyren Williams
as
the first touchdown scorer, and he got it, and the Eagles still won. So maybe it's a good thing.
So speaking of that symmetry there, I took A.J. Brown to be the first touchdown scorer. He was not because Kyren Williams, but A.J. did score the next touchdown. That was for Philly. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say A.J. Brown. He's got the inner excellence. He was talking to Jim Murphy at the NovaCare complex, so he's probably got some extra insight, some extra inner peace and inner resilience and everything else that we want to call it. So he's going to go out there, and Jalen's going to be looking for A.J. There might be some slant routes possibly. You spread it out, take advantage, but I'm going to go A.J. Brown, first touchdown score. All right, I really don't know how I could be any more pumped up for the game. I am absolutely through the roof Make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know score predictions down there in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the game stream. This has been the Philly Special.